Una vez mi esposo lo llevó un taxista y entró.
One time my husband was taken by a cab driver and he went into Benemérito. And he was amazed because from the outside you don't see everything. It's a valley, a little valley. This man was impressed and said, "No, it's not just what I see, it's what I feel." And he was impressed that this place in Mexico City, in that area, it was an oasis, and it really is an oasis.
Today we talked to Isabel Santana to learn more about what life was like at this educational and spiritual oasis, El Centro Escolar Benemérito de las Américas, or Benemérito for short. For 50 years, Latter-day Saint students lived and learned at this church-owned school in Mexico City. It changed the course of Isabel's life and the lives of countless others. And looking to the future, ground will soon be broken on the school site for a house of the Lord. This is Saints Volume 4, the podcast. I'm James Perry. Benemérito, Latter-day Saint education in Mexico. Isabel grew up in the rural town of Obregón, Sonora, located in the northern part of Mexico. We asked her what her childhood was like growing up in Obregón.
Nací en 1951 y era...
I was born in 1951. I grew up in a city that was growing, a new city, and there's a lot of agriculture. It was a very hot place. But you get used to it as a child. It's part of what you learn. We had a very big yard. There was a place to play. I used to climb trees a lot, and it was good.
Isabel's early education included local government schools and church-sponsored schools.
I was in two schools. The first one was called Cajame. My father was there, and I was there for 3 years at first. But then in 1962, the church schools were opened in Obregón. So first, second, and third, I was in Cajame school. Fourth, fifth, and sixth, I was in the church schools in Ciudad Obregón. We were a few children. We had a lot of attention. In the other schools, they were very big, with many students in the classroom. In the church schools, there was really personalized attention.
Isabel's interest in church schools grew out of her family's faith. Her grandfather was a particularly inspiring example.
My grandfather never wanted to go to any churches. But when the missionaries began to visit, I remember that he began to wait for them every afternoon to come. And they gave the discussions, and my grandfather made a total change in his life. He didn't drink anymore. He didn't do many of the things that he did before. He waited for them, and he started to be a very faithful member, even when he was very old. Sometimes he missed going to church, but he always remained faithful. So that influence was with us.
Isabel's father, though not a member of the church, encouraged his daughters to study and be independent. When she was 14 years old, Isabel and her sister Hilda asked to attend Benemérito, and their father supported their decision. The girls soon journeyed to the big city, accompanied by their mother. You can read more about Isabel's experiences in Saints Volume 4. Benemérito had opened its doors just 2 years earlier and was still under construction. Its establishment was part of the larger story of the church in Mexico. The church has been in Mexico since the 1800s, with a strong presence in the far north, where saints from the United States had settled to find refuge from anti-polygamy prosecution. Then, in the second half of the 20th century, church membership in Mexico expanded rapidly. Between 1950 and 1970, the church grew from about 6,000 to over 60,000 members. David Bolingbroke, a historian on the Saints Project, joined us to talk about how church education fit into that growth.
Right after World War II, there's a population explosion in Mexico, and the church was aware that the public school system in Mexico was not meeting the needs of many Mexican students. And so in the late 1950s, the church had a committee that went about researching what can we offer as an educational system to Mexican saints. Marion G. Romney, who was from the colonies, so a Mexican, but an Anglo-Mexican, was on that committee. Joseph T. Bentley, another from the colonies. They're working closely with their contacts in Mexico. And they carry out this investigation and they determine that there is a major need for elementary schools and for secondary schools that members of the church can send their children to. And so that lays the groundwork in 1960 when the First Presidency approves the creation of church elementary schools in Mexico. So they opened 5 in 1960. By 1963, they have around 13, including the one that Isabel went to in Obregón.
Benemérito spanned 272 acres on the north side of Mexico City. The institution included a high school, a junior college, and a school for the training of future teachers. Students lived in cottages with their peers and were expected to work as well as study, helping with the garden, farm, and other campus facilities. Along with offering students a well-rounded education and teaching them a strong work ethic, Benemérito encouraged their spiritual growth through seminary classes and regular prayer. Graduates of the school were not only prepared for professional success, they also entered the world with firm testimonies of the gospel. Benemérito had a big impact on the students who attended, including Isabel. It was unlike other educational institutions. As a boarding school, it provided students an immersive educational and spiritual experience.
From the moment we arrived, it made a different impression on us. It was not like anything we had ever seen before. It was a very big place, just under construction. But you could see what it was going to be, a place that I always felt safe in, and I liked it. But when we got there, it was only up to house 6, but we were in house number 2, and it was a nice place. Even though everything was under construction, there was already the elementary school. There was already the gymnasium. We already had all this area where we had classes.
Benemérito offered a really quality education. Mexico was a difficult environment for many students. The student-to-teacher ratio is high. Private schools offered a better education. And so when the church opened their private high school at Benemérito and then paired that with religious instruction, this offered a wonderful opportunity for students to come away with a great education that will help them build their lives economically. Benemérito provided that. They were academically competitive, but then they also, adjacent to that, would teach the seminary classes, which could not be taught in the secular school classes.
The size and bustle of Mexico City was vastly different from Isabel's hometown. The culture was different too, with different mannerisms, food, and dialects. Though Isabel was shy and intimidated by this big move, she eventually adjusted to her new environment.
For me, Benemérito was something very important in my life. I think it was a turning point. We were really a diverse society from the north and the south of Mexico. Mexico is big, so we had very different customs from the north and the south. And there we represented the whole republic. At the beginning, I had a hard time adapting to the food. There were things that I had never eaten and I did not like. We had a supervisor who was very persuasive. So you learn to eat, and I learned to eat spice or nopales, fava beans, and the things that were not customary in our family. And you learn to live with everyone, teachers from different places, different mentalities. But it was a time when I learned a lot. I was very reserved, and I continued to be. I wasn't that open, but I learned how to relate to all these new people.
The adjustment was hard for some students, and there was a rigorous schedule to follow. This was Isabel's first time living away from home, and her time at Benemérito provided her with not only academic growth, but also personal growth.
The gospel was a very important part of Benemérito. It was something that was very much united. The church activities with the school activities. And there were sports competitions, there were dances and singing programs. There were many activities, and they were all very related. In the house, when we got up, we all prayed together after breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And at the end, another prayer. And in the morning, I like to go to seminary early. We had to get up to be in class at 6 a.m. I still have friends from my time at Benemérito, my classmates. I have 4 or 5 good friends. Even though it's been 50 years, we still spend time together. It's an environment that I like, and there was good fellowship.
In the 1970s, Benemérito became a hub for developing teachers for the church's many schools around the country. After Isabel completed her high school education at Benemérito, she was one of the students who had the opportunity to receive teacher training. She taught elementary school and went on to teach seminary classes. It was during this time that she met her future husband, Juan Machuca, a fellow graduate of Benemérito.
I didn't think I would like to teach children, but I like it. The next year when we graduated, we were asked to work one more year as full-time teacher in the seminary. It was a pilot program for the women. My sister and I worked as full-time teachers. We had several children who were very active, so I had to use my motivation that I had learned in school. And sometimes with children, incentives work better. Giving them a piece of candy, giving them something, offering them a prize. The children responded. They did it. On one occasion, with the students who behaved better, I took them to the movies to see The Jungle Book.
For those who attended Benemérito, the lessons and experiences stayed with them throughout their life. But the school did not only affect its students, it also had a noticeable impact on the church in Mexico.
The church in Mexico is still pretty small in the 1960s, but it's on the rise. And Native Mexican leadership is beginning to go on the rise. And you'll see that with Benemérito. One of the things they said is, well, by law, the Mexican government wants us to only have Mexican teachers. And early on, a lot of the administrative leadership was from the colonies, but many of the teachers in the classroom are Native Mexicans. They step into administrative leadership positions as well. So this is a time when Mexican saints are assuming leadership of the local church in their areas. Benemérito created a spiritual environment for young people to grow up in a church-centered culture, a culture that focused on faith in Jesus Christ, that focused on principles of the gospel, but it did so within a Mexican context. We're taking Mexican history and literature classes at Benemérito. We're bringing people from all over the country, from many different places, diverse backgrounds, cultures, and asking them to work together as a part of a larger project. And the influence is, I think, pretty immense.
But it wasn't just the setting and the blend of religious and secular education that made a difference to the students. The teachers, administrators, and other staff were important examples to the students and had a lasting influence on them.
We had excellent teachers. Some of the teachers were very, very good. So when you admire a teacher, you think, well, why can't I do the same? Professor Wagner was a very important influence on all of us. He's a very understanding teacher. He never pressured us. He never told us, if you don't bring homework, you're going to fail or get kicked out. No, he was always calm. We had a teacher, Lucio Herrera. He had a brilliant mind and a brilliant memory. He knew all our names, first and last names in order. And the classes he taught about history were done from memory. Still later, at the school's 45th anniversary, when someone greeted him, he said their full name, Isabel Santana Hirado. There was a personal relationship with the teachers. For me, it was the best thing that happened in my youth. I have always thought that Benemérito was the best thing for me, and there are many people who think the same.
In 2013, Benemérito closed and was converted into a missionary training center. For almost 50 years, Latter-day Saints had attended the school and benefited from its blend of educational and spiritual learning. David shares some further insights into how the schools filled an important need.
Towards the 70s and 80s, you see more of a seminary and institute program being adopted as the global model for the church education system. And even into the 80s and 90s, the Mexican public school system had come a long way, and it was now providing better opportunities for many students as well. But still, the closure of Benemérito was a difficult moment for many people. It was an emotional moment because of the many good things that came out of the school. But by 2013, the church was mostly out of the private high school program. The private school system, the elementary schools had closed. Many church schools had closed. And so Benemérito was able to hold on for quite a long time. But in 2013, it was finalized that Benemérito would become the missionary training center.
For the former students, it was difficult to see the school they loved close down especially as they knew their descendants wouldn't have the same opportunity to attend it. But the church in Mexico had changed, and so had its needs. Despite that, Benemérito's influence would be felt for generations.
I am grateful to have had the privilege of having spent time at Benemérito. It was my privilege. All of us have something left from Benemérito. We had a seed. We had something that we know is the right thing to do, and we learned to love Benemérito. I'm grateful for that I had the privilege of having it in my youth and in my time of important decisions.
For the Mexican saints, Benemérito was a powerful driver of change, of learning, and of preparing future leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Men and women across the country lived their faith better, supported their families, and served more ably because of the experiences they had at Benemérito. After becoming an MTC in 2013, the Benemérito site has continued to be used by young Latter-day Saints preparing for their future. In April 2022, this was taken one step further when President Russell M. Nelson announced that a temple would be built on the site. 4 more temples were announced around Mexico City in October 2022. The legacy of Benemérito lives on. Thank you for listening to this episode of Saints Volume 4. I hope you come away with new insights, perspectives, and appreciation for the history of the Church. If you'd like to share those thoughts, you can email us at saintspodcast@churchofjesuschrist.org.